The crowd at Lincoln Square was quiet, not the kind of quiet that comes from peace, but the kind that comes before something shifts forever. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. Somewhere in the front row, a woman clutched a small American flag so tightly her knuckles turned white. And at the center of it all stood a man who shouldn't have made it this far. Zoran Mamdani. A Muslim. An immigrant. A son of a taxi driver and a dream too big for a system built to doubt him. But this wasn't just his moment. It was America's reflection staring back at itself. And in that reflection stood another figure, Denzel Washington. Calm, composed, the quiet storm everyone in that crowd could feel before he even spoke. When he finally stepped to the podium, his voice carried not like a speech, but like scripture. He prayed, he fought, he won, Denzel began, his tone low but thunderous. But what he really did, was remind America what belief looks like when the world stops believing in you. The audience didn't cheer. Not yet. They just listened. Because they knew this wasn't another Hollywood cameo. This was something else, something sacred, historical, and raw. Before he was a headline, before he was America's first Muslim mayor, Zoran Mamdani was just another name they couldn't pronounce right. He grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, where the hum of the city mixed with the whispers of his mother's prayers. She used to say, "Faith isn't something you inherit, Zoran. It's something you fight for." And he did. He fought through eviction notices, broken promises, and nights where dinner was just rice and hope. He fought through classrooms that taught him history, but never his own. He fought when teachers told him that people like him didn't end up leading cities like New York. By the time he entered politics, the system had already built walls higher than any skyscraper. But he didn't bring a wrecking ball. He brought conviction. That's when Denzel Washington first met him, not as an actor, but as a witness. It was 2018, backstage at a charity event for underfunded schools. Denzel saw him standing alone, not shaking hands, not performing. Just listening, observing. And when Zoran spoke, it wasn't polished or rehearsed, it was raw, like truth before it's edited for comfort. They don't need saviors, Zoran said, they need believers. Denzel never forgot that line. Years later, when Zoran's name lit up every newsfeed in the nation, Denzel didn't see a politician. He saw the boy who believed when no one else did. He saw faith turned into a revolution. It started with a headline, then a whisper, then a war. America elects its first Muslim mayor. By noon, cable news turned it into a crisis. Anchors framed it as a question of faith. Pundits called it a threat to tradition. And by evening, protesters flooded the steps of City Hall holding signs that read, "Faith has no place in politics." But inside those marble walls, Zoran Mamdani stood alone, no teleprompter, no party handler, no armor except conviction. He faced the cameras and said softly, "If faith means compassion, if prayer means patience, if belief means serving others, then maybe politics has been missing faith all along." The words traveled faster than any bullet-point speech ever could. Within hours, clips of that statement flooded social media. Millions watched. Some cheered. Others seethed. And that's when Denzel Washington reappeared. A single tweet, no hashtag, no picture, just 12 words. He prayed when others doubted. Now he leads when others divide. It exploded. Networks replayed it like prophecy. Opponents called it Hollywood interference. Supporters called it a blessing. But Denzel didn't care about politics. He cared about what America was forgetting, that faith isn't weakness, it's resistance. And for the first time in years, Washington, D.C. wasn't just a city of power. It was a city listening. 3 days after the election, the storm had a name, not a hurricane, but a movement. The headlines grew sharper. Is America ready for a Muslim mayor? Talk shows turned faith into spectacle. Radio hosts called him a cultural experiment. Outside City Hall, a crowd gathered, louder this time. Flags waved, chants echoed. Someone burned a copy of the Constitution, shouting that America forgot who it was. Inside, Zoran didn't move. He stared out the window at the chaos he'd inherited, not born from hate, but from fear disguised as patriotism. A staffer rushed in, voice shaking. "Sir, they're calling for your resignation." Zoran exhaled, slow, deliberate. "Then let them call. My job isn't to echo them, it's to serve them." That night, Denzel appeared on Nightline. No suit, no script, just his voice, steady as stone. This country doesn't fear change. It fears reflection. What scares them isn't a Muslim mayor. It's the mirror he holds up. The clip detonated across every feed. Cable pundits dissected every word, churches debated it, mosques replayed it after evening prayer. And in living rooms across America, something cracked, not belief, but silence. For the first time, people weren't just watching politics. They were feeling it. The night the city burned, it wasn't flames that lit the skyline, it was anger. A protest that began with chants turned into chaos. Bottles cracked against squad cars, smoke curled through the streets, and sirens sang their mechanical hymn of panic. The air reeked of sweat, gas, and fear. Denzel was in Washington that night, watching the footage roll across every screen. The headline, "America Divided, Muslim Mayor Under Siege." He turned off the TV, grabbed his coat, and whispered, "No more speeches. Time to stand." By dawn, he was in New York. Cameras caught him stepping out of a black sedan in front of City Hall, walking through the smoke like a man who'd seen this movie too many times, and decided to rewrite the ending. Zoran stood on the steps, surrounded by police, aides, and trembling volunteers. The crowd roared from below, a mix of fury and confusion. Denzel climbed the stairs slowly, then stood beside him. No handshake. No grand gesture. Just presence, calm and unshaken. The microphones caught his voice, low and deliberate. "If you burn down your neighbor's house to prove a point, you'll sleep in the ashes of your own." The words hit harder than any tear gas. The crowd fell quiet. Even the sirens seemed to hesitate. Zoran looked at him, eyes wet with exhaustion. "They don't want peace, Denzel. They want a villain." Denzel met his gaze. "Then give them something they've never seen, a leader who forgives louder than they shout." And just like that, silence reclaimed the night. Cameras zoomed in, hearts recalibrated, and history, once again, found its footing in the fire. Morning didn't heal the city, it only revealed the smoke. Storefront glass looked like glitter on the sidewalks, and the news kept looping the worst 5 seconds of a night that lasted 8 hours. Pundits called it proof. Activists called it pain. Zoran called his mother. She answered on the first ring. "Did you pray?" she asked. "All night," he whispered. "Then act like it." At City Hall, the war moved from streets to screens. Anonymous posts claimed he'd Islamicize policy. A senator suggested oaths on one book, not another. Donors paused. Old friends texted neutral emojis. But in the basement, a volunteer line wrapped around the boiler room, teachers, janitors, nurses, 2 firefighters still smelling like smoke, signing up to help with cleanups and food drives. Faith had grown legs. Denzel watched from the hallway, arms folded, a quiet sentinel. He wasn't there to headline, he was there to hold. When the press demanded a condemnation, Zoran stepped up, voice steady. "I condemn broken windows. I won't condemn broken hearts. What you saw last night wasn't a Muslim moment. It was an American one, grief, fear, belonging, colliding in public. My job is not to punish despair. It's to build a city where it has nothing to feed on." A reporter shot back, "Is faith driving your agenda?" He met the lens, unblinking. "If faith means we treat housing like shelter, not stock, yes. If it means trains should arrive for nurses on night shift, yes. If it means food is not a luxury, yes. If your problem is the word and not the work, that's not governance. That's branding." The clip detonated. Churches replayed it. Mosques sent it with dates and tea. A synagogue in Forest Hills posted it with the caption, "Justice has fluency in many languages." That evening, Denzel and Zoran walked the worst-hit block. No cameras. Just brooms. A kid in a Yankees hoodie watched them sweep and finally asked, "Does praying fix anything?" Denzel crouched to his height. "Praying reminds you who you're sweeping for." He handed the kid the dustpan. Faith didn't end the fire. It taught the city how to hold the hose together. By the next month, the city had calmed, but not healed. Polls were split down the center, every headline framed as a question mark: can faith govern? Is Denzel's America changing too fast? It wasn't politics anymore. It was philosophy on fire. Denzel visited Zoran in his office one night. Papers everywhere, phone blinking with unanswered calls, fatigue carved into every line on the young mayor's face. "They don't see me, Denzel," he said quietly. "They see their fears wearing my name." Denzel leaned against the window, looking out at the city lights like stars fallen to earth. "That's every leader's mirror test," he said. "When the reflection turns ugly, do you break the glass, or keep standing?" Zoran looked up. "And what if the mirror breaks you first?" "Then you build another. Stronger. Clearer. One that shows them who they are, not who they pretend to be." Silence filled the room, thick and holy. Outside, the faint hum of taxis drifted through the open window, a sound both men understood too well. The next morning, Zoran held a press conference. No podium, no flags, just him, standing on the steps with the people behind him. "America's never been about perfection," he said. "It's been about correction." He paused, letting the words settle. "If my faith offends you, ask what kind of freedom you believe in. If my name scares you, ask what kind of courage you've lost. I didn't run to make America Muslim. I ran to make America honest." Denzel watched from the crowd, expression unreadable. The line hit like a thunderclap through the media cycle. Networks looped it. Commentators tried to decode it. But the people didn't need translation. By sunset, graffiti bloomed across the city's brick walls, "Honest America." And under it, a single signature, ZM. Faith had stopped defending itself. Now, it was defining the fight. The system always fights back. It doesn't roar, it whispers, leaks, and smears. Within a week, headlines turned venomous. Mayor under investigation for foreign funding. Denzel Washington accused of political interference. The words weren't true, but truth moves slower than outrage. Denzel's phone rang non-stop. Old friends called to distance themselves politely. One network offered him an exclusive interview, if he apologized. He didn't answer. He'd seen this machine before, the one that punishes you for staying calm when they need a scandal. Meanwhile, Zoran sat through an emergency ethics hearing, flanked by lawyers who smiled too tightly. Cameras crowded the hallway like hungry ghosts. When the chairwoman asked if he'd used mosque donations for campaign outreach, his answer didn't shake. "Faith is not a transaction," he said. "It's a promise, to act with conscience when convenience dies." They didn't clap. They didn't need to. Somewhere beyond that chamber, millions of screens captured a man refusing to kneel. That night, Denzel met him on the Brooklyn Bridge. The skyline shimmered behind them, half dream, half warning. "They're building a story," Zoran said. "They want me broken before the next election." "Then don't give them broken," Denzel replied. "Give them undeniable." The wind cut through their coats. Silence hung, heavy as the water below. Then Denzel spoke again, voice low but carrying. "They're scared of what they can't define. A Muslim mayor who doesn't rage. A black man who doesn't bend. That's power without permission." The phrase stuck, power without permission. By morning, it was everywhere. T-shirts, hashtags, murals. It wasn't a slogan, it was a signal. The establishment panicked. Donors withdrew. Senate committees called for inquiries. But the streets answered differently. Nurses, delivery workers, veterans, they began showing up outside City Hall holding handmade signs, "We see you. We believe you." It was no longer about politics. It was about who America dared to believe. It started with one march and ended with a movement. On a gray Sunday morning, crowds filled the National Mall, not in anger, but in quiet defiance. Thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, flags lowered, signs raised. Power without permission wasn't just painted anymore, it was alive, breathing, walking. Denzel and Zoran led from the middle, not the front. "If you lead from the front," Denzel said, "they aim higher. But when you walk among them, they can't find the target." The air buzzed with camera drones and chants that sounded more like prayers. By noon, Washington, D.C. had become a sermon. Veterans marched beside immigrants. Nuns walked beside imams. A kid on a skateboard carried a sign that read, "Faith built this country too." The White House watched in silence. Networks tried to downplay the size. "A few thousand," one anchor said. But overhead shots told another story, an ocean of humanity, stretching past the Lincoln Memorial, rippling with one message: you can't silence what's already awake. When the microphones found Denzel, he didn't give them the sound bite they wanted. "We're not here to choose sides," he said. "We're here to remind power it was borrowed, not born." Zoran followed, his tone softer but cutting through the wind. "If being Muslim, black, or poor makes us political, then maybe politics forgot it was supposed to be human first." The crowd roared, not like a mob, but like a choir. For once, it wasn't chaos echoing off the Capitol, it was unity. That night, helicopters buzzed above as if searching for the fire that wasn't there. News anchors stumbled over what to call it. Protest? Revival? Revolution? Nobody knew. But the country felt something rare: clarity. In a nation obsessed with noise, two men had built silence that spoke louder than policy. And the system, for the first time in decades, was listening. The morning after the march, the city felt still. Not silent, still, like the pause between heartbeats. Sunlight slid across the monuments, tracing every crack and shadow like a fingerprint of history being rewritten. In the newsroom, pundits fought for angles. Was this a political stunt? Can faith coexist with governance? But outside their screens, something deeper had taken root. People weren't arguing, they were reflecting. Teachers started lessons with quotes from the march. Churches invited imams to speak. For one fleeting moment, America was listening to itself again. Denzel watched the sunrise from his balcony, black coffee cooling in his hand. Zoran's speech from the night before played faintly on the news, his calm voice carrying the weight of generations. "They called us impossible," Zoran said. "But impossibility is just progress waiting for proof." Denzel smiled. He remembered the years of silence before this, rooms where he'd bitten his tongue so hard it bled, knowing that one wrong word could erase everything. But not today. Today, a man with a name they once mispronounced on purpose had stood before the nation and said, "We belong." Later, they met one last time. No cameras, no advisors, just two men standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. "You did it," Denzel said quietly. "No," Zoran replied. "We did." They shook hands as the wind rose, scattering the leftover protest flyers across the reflecting pool. On one of them, the words "power without permission" caught the light before sinking beneath the water. It wasn't an ending. It was inheritance. Denzel turned away, whispering to himself. He prayed. He fought. He won. And maybe, just maybe, so did we. The camera would have faded there, but the echo remained, across screens, across states, across every quiet room where someone once thought they didn't belong. America hadn't changed overnight. But it had looked in the mirror, and, for the first time in years, didn't look away. He prayed. He fought. He won. But this story was never just about victory. It was about faith that refused to fade. And voices that refused to ask for permission. Because real power, the kind that outlives politics, doesn't come from noise. It comes from presence. Pause, sound of wind, faint heartbeat rhythm. In a country that's learning to listen again. Maybe the loudest message isn't shouted. It's lived. I'm Denzel Washington. And this time, we didn't just tell a story. We started a reflection.